Hello everyone. Do you believe that a simple request for sugar can reveal the darkest secrets of a person? My name is Marina. I'm 28 years old, and I've been living in a quiet apartment downtown for 2 years. I thought I knew all my neighbors, until that Sunday afternoon that completely changed my perspective about the men who lived next door. What started as an innocent favor turned into the most disturbing discovery of my life. Get ready, because the story will keep you up at night, and at the end, I'll reveal something even more shocking. Curious? Then let's begin. The mysterious neighbor. Sunday, 3:30 p.m. I was watching Netflix when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and found my neighbor from 300 to a man in his 40s, always well-dressed, polite in the hallways. Sorry to bother you on a Sunday, Marina. I'm Roberto. I'm baking a cake for my daughter who's coming to visit, but I ran out of sugar. Do you have some to spare? Of course, I thought. What harm could there be? I grabbed a cup of sugar and handed it to him. Thank you so much. If you'd like, you can come have some coffee when the cake is ready. I accepted. After all, I had never really spoken to him. At p.m., I knocked on the door of 302. Roberto opened it with a nervous smile. Come in. Come in. The cake turned out perfect. The house smelled nice, but there was something strange in the air. A tension I couldn't quite identify yet. I walked in and immediately noticed there were no signs of a child living there. No toys, no family photos on the shelves, nothing. The place was impeccably organized, almost like a hospital. Does your daughter live far away? I asked, trying to start a conversation. Roberto hesitated for a few seconds. Oh, yes. She lives with her mother in another city. She only comes on weekends. Strange, I thought. It was Sunday, and there was no trace of her. The table was set for just 2 people. The cake looked beautiful, but why go to so much trouble for a child who apparently wasn't there? Roberto served the coffee with slightly trembling hands. You're very kind to have come. I don't get many visitors. There was something in his voice, a mix of melancholy and nervousness. I began to feel uneasy but tried to ignore it. Roberto went to the kitchen to get more sugar for the coffee. While I waited, my eyes wandered around the room. That's when I noticed, under the sofa, partially hidden, was a phone. Not the one Roberto used. I had seen him with a gold iPhone before. This one was different, a simpler model, with a pink case and unicorn stickers. My heart raced. Instinctively, I picked it up. The screen was cracked, but it worked. No password. I opened WhatsApp and froze. The last messages were from Saturday. Dad, I'm scared, said one. Please, let me go to Mom's house, said another. And the last one made me tremble. Dad, why did you lock my door? I heard footsteps coming back from the kitchen. I quickly put the phone back, but it was too late. Roberto appeared in the doorway, looking at me with an expression I'll never forget. Did you find something interesting? Roberto's voice had completely changed. The kind tone was gone, replaced by something cold, calculating. I was just admiring your decoration. I lied, trying to stay calm. Where's the bathroom? He pointed to a dark hallway. Last door on the right. I walked slowly, feeling his eyes burning into my back. The hallway was narrow, with 3 doors. One slightly ajar, the bathroom. Another, completely closed. The third one made me stop breathing. It had a new, shiny padlock on the outside. A padlock on an inside door. Who does that? And why on the outside? I heard Roberto moving in the living room, opening drawers. My instincts screamed at me to leave immediately, but I needed to be sure of what was happening. I moved closer to the padlocked door, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in the silence. I pressed my ear against the wood and heard something that froze me. A muffled cry, barely audible. A child! A little girl! Please, I want to go home, I heard her whisper. My hands shook violently. His daughter was there, locked inside. Why? What was he doing to her? I tried the handle gently, but the padlock stopped any movement. Hello? I whispered softly. The crying stopped instantly. Is someone there? A faint little voice replied. I'm Marina, your neighbor. Are you okay? He won't let me out. I'm hungry. Tears ran down my face. I had to get her out, but how? Roberto was in the living room, probably suspicious of how long I was taking. Listen, I whispered at the door. I have to go back so he doesn't notice. What's your name? Sophia. I'm 8. My heart broke. Sophia, I'll get help, okay? Be brave. I returned to the living room, forcing myself to look normal. Roberto was on his phone, but looked up when he saw me. "You took a while. Sorry. I wasn't feeling well. I think I should go. That's a shame." We barely started talking. There was something threatening in the way he said it. I walked toward the door, but Roberto stood too. "Are you sure you don't want another slice of cake?" His hand hovered near a drawer in the shelf. "No, thank you. I really must go." My voice came out higher than usual. I managed to reach the door and step out, but I could feel his eyes on me until I entered my apartment. As soon as I locked my door, I grabbed my phone with trembling hands. I called the police. "Hello, emergency? I need to report something urgent. A child is being held captive in apartment 302 of my building." The operator asked for details. I told everything: the hidden phone, the messages, the padlocked door, the conversation with Sophia. "We'll send a patrol immediately. Don't go back to the apartment and don't confront the suspect." While waiting, I peeked through the peephole. Roberto had stepped into the hallway and was staring at my door. Did he know I had discovered everything? Minutes felt like hours. Finally, I heard the elevator. 2 officers. Roberto opened his door with a forced smile, trying to look natural, but I knew the monster behind that fought. "Good evening, sir. We received a report about a possible irregular situation in this apartment." Roberto tried to stay calm. "There must be some mistake, officers. I live alone." But one officer had already stepped inside. "Do you mind if we take a look?" It wasn't really a question. From my apartment, I could hear the conversation. Roberto tried to protest, making excuses, but the officers were firm. They went straight to the hallway. I heard them finding the locked door. "What's in this room, sir?" It's just storage." "Why is there a padlock on the outside?" Roberto's voice grew tense. For security." Then I heard the sound I'll never forget. Sophia screaming, "Help! I'm in here." The officers ordered Roberto to open it immediately. Reluctantly, he grabbed the key. When the door opened, I heard Sophia crying and one officer say, "My God." The situation was worse than I had imagined. Sophia was dehydrated, bruised on her arms, clearly terrified. The officers immediately called an ambulance and arrested Roberto. Later, I learned the full truth. Sophia was indeed his daughter, but Roberto had lost custody after his ex-wife discovered his violent tendencies. On his last visitation weekend, he refused to return her and had kept her locked for 3 days. The phone I found belonged to Sophia, who had managed to send messages to her mother before the battery died. Her mother had filed a missing person report, but Roberto lied, claiming Sophia had gone home as usual. The cake was just a cover-up to make him seem like a normal father if anyone got suspicious. Sophia was taken to the hospital and later reunited with her mother. Roberto was arrested for unlawful imprisonment, child abuse, and kidnapping. They also uncovered his past of domestic violence that had been covered up. This experience completely changed the way I see the signs we ignore in everyday life. Roberto had always seemed like a normal neighbor, polite, well-dressed. But there were signs. I never heard a child in his apartment on weekends. He was always alone. He avoided talking about family. Sometimes monsters don't look like monsters. They live next door, greet you politely in the elevator, ask to borrow sugar. Thankfully, Sophia recovered physically and began psychological treatment. Her mother called to thank me, saying Sophia was doing well, considering everything. Roberto was sentenced to 8 years in prison and lost his parental rights for good. I moved to another apartment a month later. I could no longer feel safe knowing that for 3 days, a child had suffered just a few meters away from my door, and I hadn't known. Everyone, this story taught me that we should always trust our instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't be afraid to report suspicious situations. Better to be wrong than to let a child continue suffering. That request for sugar saved Sophia's life. Imagine if I had just handed him the sugar at the door and never accepted the coffee. Sophia could have stayed locked up much longer. Sometimes a small gesture, a moment of curiosity, or a sharp instinct can change everything. Hook for the next video, but do you think the story ends here? Unfortunately not. 3 months after Roberto was arrested, I received a call that made me question everything I thought I knew about this case. The person on the other end said something that shook me to the core. "Marina, you need to know the truth about what really happened in that apartment. Roberto wasn't alone in this." Who was this person? What else didn't I know? And most disturbing, was Sophia truly safe now? In the next video, I'll tell you what I discovered later and how this story took an even darker turn. Don't miss it! I want to take a moment to thank every single one of you who has been following and supporting this channel. Each view, each like, each comment, it all means so much. And it gives me the strength to keep bringing you these dark and unsettling stories. You are not just viewers. You're part of this growing community that dares to look beyond the surface and uncover the hidden truths that most people ignore. And if you're new here, welcome. You've just stepped into a place where mystery, suspense, and chilling reality come together. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, then make sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell, because what's coming next is even darker, even more haunting, and you won't want to miss it. So stay close, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the scariest secrets are hidden right next door.